Also, guten Abend an alle und willkommen heute Abend. Wir sind hier, um das Thema Brexit zu diskutieren, was nun für Großbritannien und der EU untertitelte Chancen und Herausforderungen für Labour unter Corbyn. Vielen Dank an die Vielen Dank an die Left Internationals LAG für die Organisation dieser Veranstaltung, insbesondere an Phil Butland und Judith Bender, sowie an Karl Liebknecht Haus und die Linke für die Ausrichtung. Mein Name ist Karl McGuigan, ich bin die stellvertretende Vorsitzende der Labour Berlin und werde die Diskussion moderieren. So good evening everyone and welcome. Tonight we're discussing Brexit, what now for the UK and the EU, subtitled Opportunities and Challenges for Labour under Corbyn. Thank you very much to Left Internationals LAG for the organisation of this event, in particular Phil Butland and Judith Bender. As well as to Karl Liebknecht Haus and Die Linke for hosting. My name is Carol McGuigan. I'm the Vice Chair of Labour Berlin and I'll be chairing the discussion. Also, heute Abend werden wir aufeinanderfolgende Äußerungen unserer Redner hören, woraufhin 45 Minuten für Beiträge und aus dem Plenum zur Verfügung stehen werden. Danach wird jeder Referentin seine Antworten geben. So this evening we'll hear consecutive statements from our speakers, after which there'll be 45 minutes for input from the floor. Following that, each of the speakers will respond. Perhaps now, if most people understand English, I'll just continue in English just to move things on. So, to our speakers. So, firstly, Julie Ward is the Labour MEP for North West England. She is a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn and a speaker on the left against Brexit tour organised by Another Europe is Possible. Julie's been very kind coming here this evening, as I believe it's Strasbourg week, which is a very, very busy week for MEPs, but she's kindly come here straight from there and she'll return again tomorrow morning. Ich vorstelle Andrej aus Deutsch. Andrej Hunko ist europolitischer Sprecher für die Fraktion Die Linke im Bundestag und im EU-Ausschuss Berichterstatter für Großbritannien. Vorletzte Woche traf er Michel Barnier. Außerdem ist Andrej stellvertretender Vorsitzender der Gruppe der Vereinten Europäischen Versammlung des Verein Europäischen Linken in Parlamentarischen Versammlung des Europarates seit 2015 und seit 2014 in Parteivorstand der Linken. Just in English, Andrej is spokesman for the group Die Linke in the German Bundestag for European Affairs since 2015 and responsible for Great Britain in the Committee for European Affairs in the German Parliament. He met Michel Barnier at the end of last month. In addition, he has been Vice Chair of the Unified European Left in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe since 2015 and member of the Executive Committee of Die Linke Germany since 2014. Firstly, I'd like to invite, so thank you very much, by the way, for both of you for being here this evening. I'd like to invite Julie, first of all, to speak and to tell us what, in your view, Brexit means for Britain and to describe the current situation and perhaps what Labour's role in that can be now and going forward. Thank you, Julie.
Right. Sorry, I actually prefer to stand up, but I don't want to do that if it messes up the film. Is that okay, technicians? That's okay. All right. I'm going to start really by saying a little bit about myself and my journey into politics, because I think this is also in a way indicative of the situation we're in now. I only came into politics when I was elected in the 2014 European elections. I'd never been in politics before. And I only joined the Labour Party in 2011. I was selected as a candidate 18 months before my election, and that is very unusual. And my journey into politics was really spurred by the 2010 elections, general elections in the UK, when the Labour Party lost and we had a coalition government who said that we would now have austerity and that everybody would suffer equally. And at that point, I was working in the arts. I'm a cultural activist, really. I'm a theatre maker, I'm a poet, I'm a writer. I'd been using culture as a tool for social change all my life. And what austerity would mean for me and for the communities that I was serving, and I was working with the poorest communities in the northeast of England, with all kinds of people who really have fallen through every single social net you can imagine. What austerity was going to mean for the arts, but also for that wider community, was that everything I cared about was going to be cut. Okay? The arts were going to be cut, libraries are going to be cut, the careers service would be cut, the youth service would be cut, women's aid, legal aid and women's refuges would be cut, social care would be cut, community centres would be cut, village halls would be cut, transport would be cut. Okay? Now I could not foresee a future for me or for my communities in that scenario. So that is what was facing us in the 2010 elections. And on top of that, we had, the coalition government was a government of the Conservatives with the Liberal Democrats, and the Liberal Democrats basically broke their own promise and agreed to the hiking of student fees to an astronomical level. So this is what happened to the country in 2010. In 2011, I joined the Labour Party and began to engage with politics at a very local level, mostly actually around anti-racism, which was really raising its head. We were having increasing demonstrations of the English Defence League, which is a kind of neo-Nazi paramilitary organisation led by Tommy Robinson at that point, but also a whole load of racist movements. I had for a long time been very worried about the right-wing Eurosceptic press in my country, because their vision of Europe, their narrative about Europe, was not my experience of Europe. I had been engaged in doing European projects, peace projects with young people, where in fact I'd been bringing them to Germany every summer to engage in discussing about European values and about peace with their counterparts from European countries and even beyond. So my vision of Europe was not the Daily Mail vision of Europe, and I was losing sleep over this narrative about Europe, which was not my idea of Europe. And so this is how come I ended up really putting my name down on a list and surprisingly being selected and then being elected. I stood against a Nazi Holocaust denier, Nick Griffin of the BNP, and won a new seat back for Labour in the Northwest in the 2014 elections. And I've always been an anti-austerity politician because that's my story, okay? It's really important for me. I can't pick and choose the things that I believed in and change my spots. I can't do that. But I hadn't joined the Labour Party prior to 2011 and was even a bit concerned about it at that point because the Labour Party didn't feel to me like the party it should be. You know, the Labour Party of Tony Blair holding hands and shaking hands with George Bush wasn't my kind of a Labour Party, all right? A Labour Party that was bombing Iraq was not my Labour Party. A Labour Party that had agreed about arrangements to have PFI, which is private and privately funded initiatives for health, for a whole load of things like prisons, hospitals and all the rest of it, was not my idea of a Labour Party with its NHS, with its National Health Service. So that story is important because my coming into the political movement, I think, is why many people have joined the Labour Party at each political earthquake that we have subsequently had. So we lost the election under Ed Miliband, who, whilst on a personal level is quite a nice guy, and I've met him and I campaigned for him, was managed, okay? He was a managed politician, and the people around him were managing him. And perhaps the worst effect of this was there were a number of slogans in that 2015 election, and some of them were anti-immigrant, were about the migration debate. And some of the people working at Labour HQ just took these slogans, like never interrogated them, and put them on mugs and on T-shirts and put them out for sale. And it was shameful. It was a really shameful thing to do. But this is what happens when you're a leader and you kind of give up. You kind of give up and you give over power to unelected people around you. And I think that's really important. So we lost the 2015 election, at which point then we know the Tories had a majority. They didn't even need to be in power with the Lib Dems, okay? So in 2015, it was pretty much known to all of us that there would be an EU referendum. There would be a UK referendum on Britain's membership of the EU. And at the same time, obviously, Ed Miliband had to step down. He couldn't continue as the leader of the Labour Party. And Jeremy Corbyn's position, the fact that he won the leadership contest the first time round, is an apocryphal story in many ways, because I had already gone to a meeting of a left platform in a dingy church hall in London, and I didn't really know anybody, but there were people there that I'd campaigned with on a number of issues. So there were trade unionists who'd been striking at the National Gallery in London, okay, and I knew them. They were there. There were people who are in CND who support the peace movement, who are anti-nuclear weapons. They were in the room too. There were disabled activists that I'd campaigned with. So the room was full of people that I knew as grassroots activists, but it also had a number of key politicians there. So, for example, Diane Abbott was there, John McDonnell was there, a lovely politician who subsequently died called Michael Meacher was there, and Jeremy was there. And I think back to that, and I didn't really understand a whole load of things about politics at that point, or even about the Labour Party, but I felt that I was in the right place, that if these are all the campaigners and the campaigns that I've been working on, this is the right place to be. And I think this is before the 2016 European elections. But it's that group of parliamentarians who were in the room at that time who, when we lost the referendum when Ed Miliband stepped down, these people came together in a room and looked at each other and said, well, if you looked at the slate for the leadership at that point, it was centrists and people on the right of the Labour Party. it wasn't a very exciting list of candidates. So there was nobody really that people like me would necessarily want to vote for as leader. Perhaps the only exception might have been Yvette Cooper, because for me, I would quite like a woman leader, but I need a woman who is going to be, is going to have the right kind of politics. And she'd done loads of great things on refugees. But what happened in the campaign across that summer is that all the candidates except Jeremy engaged in really horrendous backbiting personal politics, and he did not. Okay, and this has continued. All right, Jeremy doesn't rise to it. He never ever engages in personal politics to dismiss people, to undermine them. He just doesn't do it. Okay. But in that group of left platform politicians, a few of them had already had a go at leadership and they hadn't got very far, John McDonnell for one. And so they just looked around the room and Jeremy really was the only person. So they said to Jeremy, "It's your turn. Okay, you'll have to do it." That's how it happened, okay? He didn't go, "Hey guys, I want to be the next leader of the Labour Party." It was, we need somebody on the left. We at least need to push that agenda further forward in the party. We need to make sure that the centrists and the people on the right don't grab hold of the agenda. We have to have our voice, never expecting anything would happen, okay? But that leadership contest all over that summer, it was extraordinary to witness because, they continued to be incensed by by the fact that he'd stood and were really dismissing him and trying to undermine him in all the public media, and he just continued to campaign in the way that Jeremy does, which is with the people, outside, lots of rallies, okay, in the spaces where people gather, not necessarily in the hallowed corridors of Westminster or even in the CLPs, the Constituency Labour Party meetings, okay? He's a man of the people. And it was extraordinary, that first result. So that was the first thing that happened. Then Jeremy, as leader of the Labour Party, needs to campaign for remain in the EU because that's Labour Party policy. And he's become the leader. And we're going to have a referendum, folks, in the following June. Now, some people are still blaming Jeremy for Brexit. And it's very important to say that Jeremy didn't lose the referendum for us, okay? We had lost the referendum decades ago. We'd lost it really because we allowed the right-wing populists, the extremists, the skeptics, we allowed them to dominate the debate. And we lost it because we never had any citizenship education for years. We had an ignorant population with regards to their rights and responsibilities, frankly. And I don't just mean their rights and responsibilities as EU citizens, but I mean their rights and responsibilities as British citizens, their rights and responsibilities as people living in their counties, in their towns, in their regions. The level of participation in political life, in civic life in the UK has been very, very low. So we had an uphill struggle, I suppose, and it's a very difficult call, okay? David Cameron calls the referendum. So for Labour Party supporters, I don't just mean members, but for people who want to vote Labour, voting for something that David Cameron is telling them to vote for was very, very difficult, okay? It stuck in the throats of people to do that. Many people knew that they ought to vote for Remain because certainly from a workers' rights perspective, that was important. They kind of knew that there was another agenda that they could take hold of, but it was very emotional at that point in time. The Trade Union Congress advised Remain, although it was critical of the EU, but at least it said, we are better off in the EU. We need to stay in the EU because workers' rights will be threatened outside of the EU. We work closely with our European partners on social rights and employment rights. So we're going to advise that you, our trade union members, vote to Remain. Well, you all know what happened in the referendum, and trade union members voted 6 out of 10 for Remain. Only 6 out of 10. And these are people basically now who are facing unemployment, loss of investment in their industries, but also loss of investment in their regions. Jeremy faces a second leadership contest, which was an extraordinary, horrible, dramatic affair, really, in the party, where Angela Eagle was put up against him, but was then kind of completely destroyed by the people around, by everybody, and I mean, which is very sad, I have to say. She's openly gay. Labour politician in many ways. She's a good politician, but was kind of destroyed by that process, because waiting in the wings behind her was, in fact, Owen Smith. I get the two Owens mixed up. Owen Smith. And it just wasn't a contest, okay? Owen Smith really had nothing to offer. You know, he made some pretty weird remarks in his election campaign, including homophobic remarks. And, you know, we can't have that in our movement. It's really important that we stand up for diversity in our movement. So Jeremy won the second time with even more members, even more people voting for him. So he's our leader, guys, you know, and we're getting behind him. What's happened in the Parliamentary Labour Party is that many MPs who were against him have realised they've got their seats because of him. Okay, so there's less shenanigans in Westminster, but there is still, I suppose, a rump of people who are concerned, who would like to see him being more pro-European at this point. So Brexit is happening, or is it? Is it? Have you heard of the People's Vote campaign? Okay, a mass movement in the UK now, okay? 250,000 people on the streets of London a few months ago. Another march on October the 20th. Not just People's Vote campaign, but different chapters of a People's Vote campaign. So last Monday, there was a women's campaign for the People's Vote. There are People's Vote campaigns all across the UK. And these are people who are coming together, I have to say, across different political divides, because for them, staying in Europe is more important than party politics. And there is, as well as that, there is a Left Against Brexit campaign, which is cross-party on the left. So, and that's being run by Another Europe, who work very closely with a couple of trade unionists. So Manuel Cortez from the Transport and Salaried Staff Union has been a real spearhead in that campaign. Also, Billy Hayes, who used to be the leader of the Communication Workers Union, is very active in that, but also the Musicians Union as well, a whole load of different trade unions. And we're very clear in the Another Europe Left Against Brexit campaign that we want to stay in the EU, not for a status quo EU, but we want to stay in the EU to promote a social Europe. That's really important. We need to see change in Europe. And Jeremy's been clear when he's been speaking to the Party of European Socialists, our sister parties across Europe, who are in crisis, frankly. You know, we are seeing many crises. Although the Swedish Socialist Democrats hung on at the top position on Sunday's election, it's the lowest polling that they've had for a very long time. And whilst we've got a socialist government in Spain, that kind of happened through a rather strange accident where the centre-right government had to leave office because of the corruption that was uncovered there. But we've got a socialist government in Portugal who are doing pretty good things, I think. Sorry?
With all support.
Yes, absolutely. Well, the support in Sweden was also with the Greens, not with the left. But these coalitions, these left coalitions, I think are becoming more prevalent, and in a way they've demonstrated what might be possible. I'm not tribal about being in Labour, okay, which is why I'm here tonight, okay. And because I'm campaigning with Another Europe, with people from the Green Party, with people from Syriza, I'm campaigning with Another Europe for a change of direction. Now, things have moved pretty quickly over the past couple of weeks, okay? Well, shall we just talk about Theresa May's snap election first? Tell me when I need to finish. But Theresa May decided... 5 more minutes. Theresa May decided... So don't forget, Theresa May was not an elected Prime Minister, okay? First of all. She took office because David Cameron left. But the country hasn't voted for Theresa May, okay? Well, I suppose they did the second time round. So she took a gamble in 2017 that she could win a better majority to enact her Brexit. And lost, because lots more people voted Labour. And I have to say, lots of Greens voted Labour, lots of people on the left voted Labour, because they saw that Labour might be the only solution in terms of staying in Europe. Okay, and this is important. So we've got a massive increased membership, particularly of young people, particularly people who've never been in a political party before, and they've come to the Labour movement, to the Labour Party, partly because of austerity, but they've also come because they're pro-European. And we have to be careful how we manage this. So Theresa May has her snap election in 2017. She wants to win an outright majority, and she loses seats. And then she has to try and form a government. And the only party that she can form a government with is the DUP, who are Northern Ireland, and they are right-wing, they're anti-abortion, they're homophobic, they're anti-EU, okay? Creationist as well. This is now the political party that holds the power in Great Britain. We're in trouble, okay? It's a horrendous place for Great Britain to be. She gave the DUP a huge amount of money. She gave Northern Ireland a huge amount of money. I mean, it's a bribe, frankly, isn't it? You know, you give the DUP, you give Northern Ireland a whole load of money because you want to keep the DUP sweet and keep them on your side. You know, but why couldn't Northern Ireland have that money before? You know? Anyway, so this is the situation we're now facing. And the Tories, and Theresa May has decided that hard Brexit is the path, that we will be out of Europe, we will be out of the single market, we'll be out of the customs union, and somehow or other she believes we can have all the same benefits. Well, it's not possible. I know it's not possible. This morning, Claude Juncker gave a State of the Union speech in my parliament in Strasbourg, and he said, you know, he iterates what we all know, those of us who know about Europe, that the four freedoms are indivisible, and you can't have a pick and choose a relationship. If you're not a member in the club, then you can't have the benefits of being in the club. So, the situation is that the Tory party is tearing itself apart. Labour's holding together, I have to say. We are holding together. Sometimes it feels a bit shaky, but we're holding together. Keir Starmer, who is our Shadow Secretary for exiting the EU, came up with 6 tests, 6 Brexit tests. And he came up with them 18 months ago. They still hold true. Okay? It's very important that people know this. Because if the deal that's on the table in front of the Parliamentary Labour Party, in front of Westminster, if the deal on the table doesn't tick all those 6 tests, and they're all about pretty much having the same benefits, okay, I can find them for you later if you want. If it doesn't fulfil those 6 tests, the Parliamentary Labour Party will vote against the deal. It will not vote for the deal. The one thing they didn't put in those 6 tests, they didn't talk about peace in Ireland, okay? So for me, and I know it's true also for the Labour Party, it's the 6 tests plus it's the integrity of the Good Friday Agreement. That's really important. But what we've seen in the past, well, then Theresa May keeps concocting different kinds of plans, but none of them work. And somebody's always undermining them, because what the hard Brexiteers and her party want is they want out of Europe so that they can completely deregulate Britain, and they can get rid of workers' rights, and they can sell off the NHS to the lowest bidder. Okay, that's where we are headed with Theresa May's Brexit. So what happened at the Trade Union Congress earlier this week is very significant. The TUC are now backing a people's vote. And this is because of the direction of travel with Brexit. And we have a Labour Party conference in just over a week. And so we are going to have to take account of what the trade unions said. And I am quite hopeful that we will also pass a resolution. We're at least going to have a debate about Brexit, which we didn't have last year. And I think that because we've got the trade unions behind the people's vote, and because many constituency Labour parties have sent motions to the conference asking for a people's vote, which is effectively another referendum on the final deal. Hoping that that's what we will see. Okay, I'll finish there.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you very much. Danke, Julie. Also, Andrej, was sind die Auswirkungen auf Deutschland und der EU nach Brexit? Welche Szenarien entwickelt sich Ihrer Meinung nach?
Okay, erstmal vielen Dank auch an Julie, dass du hierher gekommen bist. Ich glaube, das ist sehr anstrengend in einer Straßburg-Woche. Ich war auch mal Mitarbeiter im Europaparlament und ich weiß, was Straßburg-Woche heißt. Ich würde gerne ein paar Sätze sagen, so für ein paar grundsätzliche Kontexte, in denen wir als Linke in Deutschland uns bewegen, was EU angeht und was Brexit angeht. Weil es für uns überhaupt nicht leicht ist, sozusagen eine klare Position hierzu einzunehmen. Also erstmal, Linke sind Internationalisten. Wir sind für internationale Solidarität und wir sind natürlich auch für internationale Kooperation, was ja eine Kooperation von Staaten ist. Da gibt es sehr viele Formate und in der Regel unterstützen wir das auch. Bei der Europäischen Union und der Geschichte der Europäischen Union ist es ein bisschen anders, weil die Europäische Union immer ein Projekt war, was sehr stark dominiert war von Wirtschaftsinteressen in der Geschichte und was sich sozusagen konsolidiert hat in den Grundlagenverträgen der EU, in dem Maastricht-Vertrag und dem Lissabon-Vertrag. Muss ich warten jetzt zur Übersetzung oder wie ist das, wie wird das gehandhabt?
Ich schreibe das auf und Sie können mitlesen.
Lesen? Soll ich langsamer reden dann?
Nee, ist okay.
Oder shall I speak in English? It's maybe better or easier for you. Okay. Das ist auch einer der Gründe, warum zum Beispiel Jeremy Corbyn, soweit ich weiß, noch in den 70er Jahren auch gegen den Beitritt der Großbritanniens in die Europäische Union war, weil sozusagen auch bei linken Labour-Leuten die EU auch kritisch gesehen wurde, als eben neoliberales Projekt, als Projekt von mächtigen Wirtschaftsinteressen. Gleichzeitig ist die EU natürlich real, sie existiert real, sie ist ein reales Gebilde, in diesem Gebilde sich die Kooperation abbildet und das heißt sozusagen, dass wir nicht einfach für einen Brexit sind oder für eine Auflösung der EU, sondern natürlich sehr genau schauen müssen, was passiert. Das ist das eine Prinzip. Wir sind Internationalisten, aber wir sind kritisch über die Art und Weise der bisherigen europäischen Integration und haben sozusagen auch, ich persönlich war beim Verfassungsreferendum 2005 in Frankreich, wo eine Mehrheit ja gegen diesen Verfassungsvertrag war, der jetzt 1:1 im Lissabon-Vertrag ist. oder ich war auch in Irland beispielsweise am 12. Juni 2008, als sozusagen auch die irische Bevölkerung sich dagegen gestellt hat. Das ist das eine. Das zweite Grundprinzip, von dem wir ausgehen müssen, ist, dass wir den Willen der Bevölkerung immer respektieren. Also wenn es ein Referendum gibt, haben wir immer gesagt, das ist zu respektieren. Das galt für die Referenden in Irland und Frankreich so. Das galt auch für die Referenden zum Beispiel in Norwegen. Norwegen ist ja nicht der EU beigetreten. Wollte die Mehrheit der Bevölkerung das nicht. Das habe ich auch immer gesagt, als ich Berichterstatter für die Beitrittsverhandlungen in Island war vor einigen Jahren. Da gab es ja auch Beitrittsverhandlungen, aber stabil 2/3 der Bevölkerung sozusagen den Beitritt abgelehnt haben, weil natürlich von norwegischer oder isländischer Perspektive aus es auch für die Menschen eine Verschlechterung darstellt. Ja, weil sie ein höheres auch Sozialstaatsniveau haben, höhere soziale Rechte haben, als das sozusagen in den EU-Verträgen drin ist. Ich weiß, dass sozusagen aus britischer Perspektive tatsächlich die EU manchmal als etwas Besseres dasteht in dieser Hinsicht, als das sozusagen als das Westminster jetzt macht. Also wir respektieren immer die Entscheidung der Bevölkerung, deswegen haben wir auch zugestimmt beim Beitritt Kroatiens zur EU, ja, obwohl wir kritisch sozusagen auch zur EU sind, weil die kroatische Bevölkerung in einem Referendum gesagt haben, wir wollen das. So, das ist das eine. Jetzt konkret zu was den konkreten Brexit angeht. Ich habe im Bundestag dann, als die Debatten vor dem Referendum waren, versucht mit den Linken in Großbritannien, ein Großteil der Linken hat ja sozusagen für Remain and Change gewotet, also sich eingesetzt, also sozusagen in der EU zu bleiben und die EU zu verändern. Wobei wir dann wirklich mal darüber reden müssen, wie wir die EU verändern können. Ja, weil das nämlich nicht sehr einfach ist, würde ich sagen, aber ich finde das sehr positiv. Aber es gab auch einen kleineren Teil der Linken in Großbritannien, die sozusagen für einen Lexit waren, einen Left-Exit. Wir haben von beiden Lagern die in den Bundestag eingeladen, haben die Debatten geführt. Das war Nick Dearden, kennt ihr vielleicht, für Remain and Change und Kevin Ovenden für den Brexit. Und dann kam es auch für uns alle völlig überraschend zu dieser Entscheidung. Niemand hat hier damit gerechnet. Und was wir immer gesagt haben, was unsere Rolle auch war, hier zu sagen, die EU muss sich ändern, damit sie attraktiv ist für die Menschen. Ja, das heißt vor allen Dingen soziale Fragen. Wir haben oftmals Kritik an der sozialen Politik und die spielt natürlich in der Austeritätspolitik eine ganz große Rolle. Jeder hat das mitgekriegt, wie mit Griechenland umgegangen wurde, wie mit Portugal auch umgegangen wurde, wie mit Zypern umgegangen wurde und so weiter und so fort. Und nur wenige Tage, will ich nochmal daran erinnern, nach dem Brexit-Referendum hat Juncker gesagt, beispielsweise CETA, das war damals ein ganz großes Thema, die Verhandlungen zu TTIP und CETA, da haben die nationalen Parlamente nichts mitzuentscheiden. Es ist sozusagen eine EU-Only-Entscheidung und das zeigt, wie unsensibel aus meiner Sicht damit umgegangen wird, weil ich glaube, die EU braucht eine Demokratisierung. Dann ging die Debatte los mit den Verhandlungsstrategien. Es gab hier im Bundestag sehr viele Stimmen, die gesagt haben, man muss hart verhandeln mit Großbritannien, weil man muss auch sozusagen ein Zeichen setzen, man muss Großbritannien bestrafen dafür, dass sie aus der EU austreten, auch um sozusagen den Zusammenhalt der anderen Mitgliedstaaten zu gewährleisten. Dagegen haben wir uns immer gestellt. Wir haben immer gesagt, in der Verhandlungsstrategie müssen die Rechte der Bevölkerung im Mittelpunkt stehen und zum Beispiel haben wir gefordert, dass die Rechte, also die Rechte auch der EU-Bürger in Großbritannien und die Rechte der Briten in der EU, dass die sozusagen separat abgeschlossen werden sollen, unabhängig davon, wie nachher der Deal aussieht. Jetzt haben wir ja die Situation, dass die Rechte zwar verhandelt sind, dass man sich einig ist, aber die Rechte abhängig sind, ob es am Ende einen Deal gibt. Sie sind nicht unabhängig sozusagen ratifiziert, sondern sie sind letztlich unter Vorbehalt gestellt, dass es zu einem Deal kommt. Das war eine Position. Eine zweite Position, die wir eingenommen haben, ist, dass sozusagen die Punkte in der EU, die von der konservativen Regierung in Großbritannien immer blockiert worden sind und die wir positiv sehen, nämlich zum Beispiel die Tobin-Tax. Ja, das war immer der Punkt, die deutsche Regierung hat gesagt, wir können die Tobin-Tax nicht einführen, die Finanztransaktionssteuer nicht einführen, weil die Briten sich dagegen wehren. Nach dem Referendum war das gar kein Thema mehr. Ja, so dass wir gesagt haben, diese Sachen muss man jetzt in der EU vorantreiben, aber es wurden dann ganz andere Sachen vorangetrieben, wo die Briten auch blockiert haben, nämlich die Militarisierung der EU, Stichwort PESCO, Permanent Structural Cooperation, jetzt auch im neuen EU-Haushalt ein neu eingerichteter sogenannter Europäischer Verteidigungsfonds für 13,5 Milliarden Euro. Und sozusagen, wir haben eine ganz beschleunigte Militarisierung der EU, die jetzt sozusagen vorangetrieben wird, weil die Briten das nicht mehr blockieren. Die Briten hatten das immer blockiert, weil sie gesagt haben, wir sind doch in der NATO und wir brauchen keine eigenständige EU-Armee, keine eigenständige EU-Militarisierung. Wie ist die Lage jetzt, um auf die Fragen zu kommen? Ich habe vor 10 Tagen, war Barnier in Berlin, der Verhandlungsführer der EU, und hat in einer kleineren Runde sozusagen den Verhandlungsstand vorgestellt. Und 80 bis 85% der Punkte sind ausverhandelt. Dazu gehören die Rechte, die ich erwähnt habe, da gehören viele Detailfragen. Aber es gibt Kernfragen, die ungelöst sind und wo nicht absehbar ist, wie sie gelöst werden können. Und dazu gehört, das hast du angesprochen, Julie, die Frage in Irland, die Frage einer möglichen Grenze zwischen der irischen Republik und Nordirland ist also eine solche mögliche Grenze wäre eine absolute Katastrophe, würde auch von den Menschen in der Region überhaupt nicht akzeptiert, würde das Karfreitagsabkommen unterlaufen und würde möglicherweise auch sozusagen zu einer Entwicklung führen, die auch einen Bürgerkrieg wieder, wie er mit dem Karfreitagsabkommen ja sozusagen beendet wurde, wieder auf die Tagesordnung setzen würde, oder die Frage zumindest. Und das wäre eine Katastrophe. So, die EU will, weil zwischen Nordirland und Republik Irland verläuft ja dann die Außengrenze der EU zwischen Großbritannien und der EU. Was eine Lösung wäre, wäre ein Sonderstatus für Nordirland sozusagen und eine Grenze zwischen Nordirland und UK. Ja, das ist sozusagen die EU-Position auch. Das ist auch eine Position, die die irische Linke, zum Beispiel Sinn Féin, unterstützt. Das passt ja auch in die Strategie. Es ist aber auch eine Position, die aus Sicht des britischen Empires eigentlich völlig inakzeptabel ist. Weil sie ja sozusagen dazu führt, dass es zu einer weiteren Schwächung eigentlich des Vereinigten Königreichs kommt. Und ich weiß nicht, ich kenne die innenpolitische Debatte in Großbritannien nicht so, aber es wäre vielleicht auch interessant. Ich weiß nicht, inwieweit das überhaupt akzeptabel ist oder was auch zum Beispiel Jeremy Corbyn dazu sagt. Das ist der Hauptstreitpunkt, wo auch eine Lösung nicht klar ist. Ein zweiter wichtiger Streitpunkt gegenwärtig ist die Frage der Gerichtsbarkeit bei künftigen Streitigkeiten. Ja, man wird ja irgendwelche künftigen Beziehungen haben und dafür braucht es dann auch eine Gerichtsbarkeit. Da ist die Position der EU und von Barnier, dass dies der EuGH in Luxemburg sozusagen dafür zuständig ist. Das ist eine Position, die Großbritannien nicht akzeptiert. Also die Frage der Gerichtsbarkeit ist auch ein großer Streitpunkt gegenwärtig. Es gibt auch noch weitere Punkte, zum Beispiel die Frage von Galileo. Das wird in der Öffentlichkeit nicht so diskutiert, aber hat Barnier auch angesprochen. Galileo ist ein Satellitensystem der EU mit einer militärischen Komponente. Wir haben früher im Europaparlament immer dagegen gekämpft. Wir haben immer gesagt, Galileo soll ein rein ziviles Projekt sein. Das ist leider abgelehnt worden. Aber die Briten wollen jetzt sozusagen Zugriff haben auch auf die militärischen Signale von Galileo. Das ist völlig inakzeptabel für die EU und das kann ich auch nachvollziehen. Die Frage, ich habe Barnier gefragt, wie groß die Wahrscheinlichkeit ist, dass es zu einem Abkommen kommt. Und die Antwort war, there is a good chance to get a deal. Das ist sehr wenig. Also man könnte es vielleicht übersetzen, 60-40 Wahrscheinlichkeit. Und das heißt also ein ganz, ganz hohes Risiko eines Hard Brexit, eines Cliff Edge Brexit, eines Dirty Brexit, wie man auch immer das nennen will. Also die Wahrscheinlichkeit ist jedenfalls in einer realistischen Größenordnung. Und ein solcher Hard Brexit ist in der Tat eine Katastrophe, weil auch die anderen Rechte zum Beispiel, die ja verhandelt worden sind, überhaupt dann alle zur Disposition stehen, nichts geklärt ist, angefangen von Flugverbindungen mit Großbritannien über die Situation der Menschen, die dort leben und so weiter und so fort. Also es ist ein Katastrophenszenario. Die gegenwärtige Verhandlungsstrategie von Barnier, aber auch die Position der Bundesregierung ist eine harte Verhandlungslinie in der Hoffnung, dass Großbritannien am Ende beidrehen wird. Ja, weil dieses Katastrophenszenario für Großbritannien noch katastrophaler sein würde, als es sozusagen für die EU ist. Aber es ist meines Erachtens eine hochriskante Strategie. Ich habe mit einigen Europapolitikern hier von der CDU gesprochen, die natürlich großen Einfluss auch haben auf die Verhandlungsstrategie. Die sind sich alle hundertprozentig sicher, dass die Briten dann sozusagen am Ende beidrehen werden, je näher die Lkw-Schlangen sozusagen an den Grenzen sozusagen ins Bewusstsein kommen. Ich weiß nicht, ob das sozusagen realistisch ist. Ich habe auch gestern hatte ich ein Gespräch mit dem zyprischen Außenminister. Zypern ist ja ein Land, was auch zwar weit weg ist, aber enge Wirtschaftsbeziehungen auch zu Großbritannien hat, aus der Geschichte heraus. Und auch er hat die Einschätzung, dass ein Hard Brexit sehr realistisch sein kann. Und sie bereiten sich auch in Zypern vor mit Maßnahmen, wie man sozusagen in einer solchen Situation möglichst die eigene Wirtschaft schützt. Jetzt gibt es die Situation natürlich in Großbritannien, dass auch die Stimmung tendenziell eher, du hast das angedeutet, auch mit der Entscheidung vom TUC sozusagen in die Richtung geht, man will vielleicht nochmal ein Referendum haben. Das ist eine Position, die wir nicht fordern können. Aber also weil das sozusagen eine Entscheidung der britischen Bevölkerung sein muss und wir nicht von außen sagen, er soll so oder so verhandeln. Was für uns Kernforderungen sind, die Rechte der Bürger müssen gesichert werden. Eine innerirische Grenze ist für uns auch inakzeptabel. Und wenn man über die Möglichkeit eines Hard Brexit redet, dann würde ich sagen, das ist eine Forderung, die ich dann aufbringe in den Debatten, dass ein Notfallfonds eingerichtet wird für diejenigen Bürger, die sozusagen besonders betroffen sind, die sozusagen ihren Job verlieren, vielleicht ihren abwandern müssen, dass sozusagen da eine soziale Abfederung stattfindet, aber das ist nicht unsere Kernforderung. Ich bin der Meinung, und ich habe in den letzten Tagen viel darüber diskutiert, dass ich will vielleicht nochmal den Zeitrahmen sagen, damit das nochmal klar ist. 31. März ist Stichtag, ja, weil am 31. 2 Jahre dürfen die Verhandlungen laufen, nach den EU-Verträgen. Eigentlich wollte man bis zum Oktober zu einem Abschluss kommen. Dieser Termin ist schon eigentlich jetzt wieder verschoben worden auf November. Der ist aber nicht lange verschiebbar, weil es natürlich auch innerhalb der Europäischen Union den restlichen Zeitraum braucht, um die Ratifizierungsprozesse dann abzuschließen. Ich bin der Meinung, dass man auch da sozusagen hier ab einem gewissen Punkt dafür eintreten sollte, dass es eine Verlängerung der Verhandlungen gibt. Ja, also das ist, was Barnier ablehnt, weil die EU kann entscheiden, und das steht auch so in den Verträgen drin, dass ein Verhandlungszeitraum eben entsprechend nochmal um 2 Jahre verlängert werden kann. Es würde den Raum geben, dass politische Prozesse in Großbritannien, die du jetzt zum Teil angesprochen hast, aber auch politische Prozesse in der chaotischen Regierungspartei, in den Tories, dass diese Prozesse vielleicht sich entwickeln können. Also ich wäre dann schon, wäre mir lieber eine Verlängerung der Verhandlungszeit als sozusagen ein Dirty Brexit, also ein Brexit ohne ein Abkommen mit den ganzen furchtbaren Konsequenzen, die das bedeuten würde. Wenn man, und das wäre vielleicht eine Frage noch auch an Julie, wenn man ein zweites Referendum fordert, sollte es nicht sozusagen eine Labour- oder auch eine Gewerkschaftsposition sein, dass man ein solches Referendum mit einer sozialen Forderung verbindet. Zum Beispiel mit einem sozialen Fortschrittsprotokoll in den EU-Verträgen, was ja immer die Gewerkschaftsposition auf europäischer Ebene war und was immer von der neoliberalen Kommission abgelehnt wurde und vom Rat. Dann hätte man natürlich auch eine Möglichkeit, ein zweites Referendum zu begründen, weil sich ja real was auch verändert hat in der EU. Das ist eine Überlegung, die sozusagen ich habe. Also um vielleicht nochmal zusammenzufassen, wir sind, wenn die Großbritannien sich entscheidet, in der EU zu bleiben, dann werden wir das begrüßen, also wenn die Bevölkerung das entscheidet. Wir müssen aber auch den zweiten Teil von Remain and Change, wenn es dazu käme, Remain and Change, bleiben und verändern, ich glaube auch diesen zweiten Teil, die EU verändern, sehr, sehr ernst nehmen, weil die Veränderung ist unglaublich schwierig und sie ist unglaublich notwendig. Vielen Dank für die Aufmerksamkeit.
Also vielen, vielen Dank, Andrej. Also jetzt haben wir die Möglichkeit, Fragen und Kommentare aus dem Plenum zu hören. Sie können in jeder Sprache sprechen, in der Sie ihn wohlfühlen. Ja, bitte beachten Sie maximal 3 Minuten Zeit haben und Ihren Standpunkt darzulegen. Ich werde nach 3 Minuten aufhalten. So now we have the possibility for people to speak from the floor. You can speak in whichever language you feel comfortable in. Please try and keep your contributions to 3 minutes. I'll stop you after 3 minutes. So we have a microphone here to speak into. So whoever's ready to say something, please come forward or go back, depending on where you're sitting. Please. Hello.
Hello.
Anything? Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your contribution. I will speak in English because I want to speak to you especially. Well, I think it's a rather complicated case, the whole Brexit thing for Labour. I just want to remind there were major discussions. For example, there were people saying go with Cameron, and Corbyn was quite clear Cameron is not on the right side of the Brexit referendum. There's a major difference between Cameron staying in the UK and the other. So I want to point out that if you would have stayed in the EU with a Cameron deal, this would have made actually the EU worse. It would have changed policy, it would have changed institutions. That would mean more exception for more neoliberalism. So it's a really problematic thing. Then for the referendum, which had the result we all knew afterwards, there were arguments that Parliament should decide because the people could not decide on this. And if this didn't work out, then it's now the same people saying, okay, Parliament, we couldn't use Parliament to stop it, now again the people should decide. Isn't there a rather, problematic view of really shifting the plane where you want to fight? It's not really a democratic thing, it's really just it just seems to me they really just stick to everything they can find where they could work against the referendum. And I think it's a problem from a democratic principle perspective. Then, really, as you said, it's not clear what this referendum should be on. If it's on the final deal, it's a referendum on a deal we cannot really like, or a deal which is no deal. And that's not a real choice, I would say. Or let's say it's a really special choice. It's a strange thing May has managed to come with, and it's not really a thing Labour should like, I think, because everything she does is not the way you would make a deal with the EU. So the question is really, what would be the consequence of such a second referendum, and what would be the strategy for Labour, really? What would be the strategy for Labour? So I think you want to have a different deal, but then you have to topple May, and then you have to have much more time to get a different deal. So how should this really work out? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, can we have someone else now, please? No.
Hi, I'm actually from the UK, but I've seen through mostly the newspaper. Sometimes I go back and I'm not there that often. And there was 2 points I was going to make. I think Andrej had some concerns about having a second referendum because it doesn't want to go on and on and on, that the decision has been made. However, I think it's quite useful to point out the outright lies that were made in the lead up to the first referendum. I think most famously the 350 million per week promised to the National Health Service, among many, many others. And I think there's something terribly wrong in British society and British politics where lies like that can be disseminated to the whole population, and then without any facts, no real commercials sponsored by the official parties that are put on TV to actually inform people in a proper way. It's all lies and misinformation. So I think if you take that into consideration, you have room for a valid second referendum. Just another point leading to the point made by Julie about the prevalence of ignorance and some terrible educational developments in the last decades. For the majority of English people, they really don't know how to be a proper citizen. And I think a lot of what happened in the referendum was a result of influence and xenophobia. And then, of course, the status quo normally in the UK is right-wing conservative most of the time. And you can see that in what's happened in development and Britain's influence in policy making within the European Parliament, working against some of the more socially progressive policies. So maybe isn't a soft Brexit, if we're talking about Europeans as a whole, isn't a soft Brexit with Britain without decision making but having to conform to the 4 pillars, maybe a better thing for Europe. So, thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So, someone else? Yeah, bitte.
option für die Linke in Deutschland, was ich verstanden. Das heißt, Demokratie ist, jeder weiß, das ist die Mehrheit, die Power of Mehrheit. Und die Linke haben keine Mehrheit im Europäischen Parlament, was ich weiß. Wieso, oder gibt es diese Hoffnung, dass irgendwann durch diese Demokratie, das im Europäischen Parlament gibt und auch in Deutschland, wir Linke auch irgendwie was ändern können? Ich meine, wenn man sagt, okay, stay and change, werden wir die Linke im Europäischen Parlament auch ein bisschen werden wir auch in Mehrheit sein, dass was ändern, oder wie kann man, oder muss man diese Bedeutung von Demokratie ändern? Das heißt, Demokratie ist the power of the Mehrheit, und wenn die Mehrheit ist, der rechte Wing in Deutschland, auch im Europäischen Parlament, was für eine Hoffnung gibt. Das heißt, wenn man Stay and Change als ein Motto sieht.
Danke. Okay, jemand, bitte?
Just a short addition to the last question, really. So, Andrej mentioned how difficult the project of staying within the European Union and changing it from within would be. I just wondered if Julie has any experiences of talking to people about that and what staying and changing the EU would look like to her.
Thanks. Yeah, someone else? Please, okay.
I think two of the things that Julie said were very important. The first is that the referendum as it was in Britain went out in the media, people were being asked to choose between pest and cholera, between plague and cholera, that they were asked to choose between a Britain led by Nigel Farage or a Europe led by David Cameron. And to be honest, I followed it a lot, and in the end I was really, really happy that I don't have voting rights in Britain more. I would have found dirty voting for either side in that discussion. The other thing that Julie said was it's not just about Brexit, it's about austerity. Originally we were going to have this meeting. We're coming up to the 10-year anniversary of the crisis. We see throughout Europe austerity being put through. And to be honest, EU membership isn't a guarantee against it. If you live in Greece, the EU has more imposed austerity on you than protected you. In that case, I have a worry about our side pushing for another referendum, because I think that is moving the discussion back. I don't want to go through those 2 years again. I don't want to go through the time when the whole of the media discussion is dominated by Nigel Farage or David Cameron, at the same time that the hundreds of thousands of people are joining the Labour Party because they're inspired by Jeremy Corbyn. And I rather worry, particularly if you're talking about something, we'll talk to other people in other parties who are for the EU. There are plenty of people in Germany who are for the EU who I want nothing to do with. Whereas I think certainly Andrej's suggestion that if you do push for a referendum, you push for the question to be very, very social. But also, wouldn't it be better just pushing for a new election? Get rid of May. May has passed her sell-by date, if she ever had one. The Conservative government is in tatters, and I really have my worry that putting our concentration at the moment on a Brexit referendum is missing where the fault lines are in Britain at the moment. The fault lines in Britain are a massive Labour Party, the biggest political party in Europe, inspired by Jeremy Corbyn. Good luck to you. Unfortunately, Labour isn't in the same international as the LINKE. We hope we can change that over time. But this is something that's inspiring. I worry that talk about referendum will kind of divert from that.
Thank you. Thanks. So, do we have any more? Yeah, please. Yeah.
So this is directed a bit to Julie. So you said you had experience in more disadvantaged communities across the UK. My general impression is also from the US, where we have this kind of, I would say, this split between urban and rural, where it's mostly people that are self-identifying as globalists. So in the UK, I would venture to say it's the city, London, versus much of the surrounding areas where people feel actually much more left behind by the effects and the ravages of globalization. what do you see in these quote-unquote left-behind areas as a potential for a new Europe? What are the strategies for labor, and how are they trying to drive the narrative towards a more social and inclusive Europe?
Thank you. Yep, Paul.
I think in political questions, it's only good to answer, where's the money going? The Conservative Party needs the big donors and the big firms. They are already starting to pull out. Nissan are threatening to leave the northeast. EADS, Airbus, may not stay. They're just one of 20. I just have difficulty believing that the Conservative Party is going to commit collective suicide, because the biggest donors are refusing to give money now. There are some that support Brexit, yeah, but the really big, not to mention the 30,000 jobs depending on the finance industry that are pulling out to Frankfurt and Paris and God love us, Dublin, that needs the jobs. So I just have a problem. I think they're going to have to find a solution around that. After all, Brexit only started as a means of keeping the election in the election, the Tories in the election game. It was done purely and simply to help the Conservatives win an election, because they were bleeding votes to Nigel Farage. That's why he did it. I think the money is going to put pressure on them. What exactly they'll do, I don't know. But the money, at the end, the money will decide.
Thank you. Yeah. We've only just had one woman speaking, so it'd be really good if we could hear from any other women in the room. That would be good. Just give you some time to think about it and come to the microphone. No. We can have a second round, yeah, as Julie says. Okay, so does anyone else want to say something before we hear from the speakers again? Okay, one more person. Thank you.
So I think one of the most interesting points that came up in the discussion so far came from Julie when you said that the referendum wasn't lost in 2016, it was lost 30 years ago when we lost control of the narrative, wherein the British media portrays the EU the way the American media portrays the UN. It's an external entity, it's not a multinational collective wherein you have a say, wherein you have membership. It's just this abstract enemy, and it's a zero-sum game. Either Britain wins or the EU wins, and there's no common benefit. Even if Brexit were to be stopped or reversed, how would one undo this toxic damage, this image crisis that the European Union faces among the electorate? And how does one reclaim that narrative without aggravating 50% of the voters who have swallowed this up for 3 decades?
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so we can turn again to our speakers. Just one point that I would like to make. Someone mentioned Nissan, which is based in the town that I was born in, actually, which is Sunderland. But an interesting, perhaps maybe contradictory fact about Nissan is that they actually cut their workforce hugely in 2008, at just around the time of the financial crisis. So, it's interesting to note that, that obviously there's a dependency on jobs, but what can reduce jobs is obviously the policies of neoliberalism that happened from that point on. Let's first of all hear from Julie in terms of responding to some of the comments and questions made, and then we'll hear from Andrej.
Sorry, I always stand up. You know, I worked in theatre, so I speak better when I'm standing up. First of all, you said the first person who spoke talked about the close result. The point is, either way, it's a difficult scenario. You know, the margin was so narrow that we have really damaged our country. We have ripped our country apart because of this. I talk a lot about the costs of Brexit. Yeah, we've got the cost of capital flight. We've got the cost of the exchange rate being very difficult for people now. Things are already costing lots of money. You know, all kinds of factories are closing, people's businesses are going, we're seeing real job losses. I hear it on a daily basis, personal stories about people who cannot work anymore, either because they're self-employed and they've lost their self-employment, or because their factories closed down, because the supply chain's been disrupted, or whatever. And I think it would have been the same. I think this feeling would have been the same if it had just tipped the other way. So we're in a mess. But the biggest cost for me is social cohesion. It's what we did to our country. It's what we did to our families. It's what we did to our communities. And it's going to take us a decade or more to heal that. For Labour, the top 20 Leave constituencies were Labour voting constituencies, and the top 20 Remain constituencies were Labour voting constituencies. We didn't call the referendum, we didn't lose it. You know, it's a Tory thing, they need to own it, actually. But we're the only party, really, who are trying to somehow bridge this terrible divide that's been opened up in our communities. So I don't think, you know, for me, it's close, whatever. It's very important for people to understand that the majority of the British people did not vote for Brexit, because so many people were shut out of the process that it's only about, I think it's 37% of the population actually voted actively for Brexit. So let's remember that, okay? Lots of people were shut out of the process. Young people weren't allowed to vote. And if you were 16 and 17 years old and you were living in Scotland in the September previously, you were allowed to vote in a referendum. Come the following June, you weren't allowed to vote. Personally, I'm going to talk about democracy at some point in answer to this, and I think that is really poor democracy, that you say some of the people who are, the groups of people who are going to be really impacted by this decision are not allowed to vote. So British expats been living over in mainland Europe, in one of the EU member states, not allowed to vote if they've been living here a long time. And the EU 27 citizens who live, work in our country, who pay into the tax economy, students as well, not allowed to vote, okay? Shut out of the process. Now, I find that appalling, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about democracy later. So I think for me, we can't, you know, we've still got a way to go on this really difficult chasm that's been opened up in our society. Letting the people decide, is that a good thing or not a good thing? Well, frankly, what the Labour Party want is a general election. We'd like to bring the government down, okay? That is our first priority. However, the numbers don't add up, okay? And the Conservatives are very, very good at holding together. So there's some Tories who would like, who are really pro-European. They don't want Brexit either. They're trying to find out a way to do something about it. They certainly don't want hard Brexit. Dominic Grieve, who'd actually laid down an amendment to the withdrawal bill, which was to give Parliament a meaningful vote, voted against his own amendment. Okay, so can you see the Tories giving up? No, when push comes to shove, they come together, they join forces, they get behind the leader. They're terrified of a general election because they will lose. They'll never give 16 and 17-year-olds the vote either, okay? Because the young people won't forgive them for what they've done. So that would be our solution, but that's not going to happen. So the next best thing is probably going to be let the people decide, I think. And it's fraught with all kinds of pitfalls, but we're in a terrible mess, and I don't think the politicians can sort it out, frankly. And in a way, giving it back to the people again, but a much more engaged population, a much more educated population. And if we could make sure that people who were shut out of the process the first time round could have a say in it, we'd be in a much different situation. I don't know what the questions would be, but Caroline Lucas, the Green Party leader and the only Green Party MEP in Parliament, has said there should be 3 questions, there should be 3 answers, that we can't be just looking at voting yes or no against a deal. We have to have some other options as well, and remaining has to be one of them. The consequences, whatever we do, I've said we're in a mess. I just think that, Britain is no longer a stable country, folks, okay? People talk about civil disobedience. Both sides are talking about it now. Andy Burnham, who's the Labour mayor for Greater Manchester, is very worried about a people's vote because he also fears riots on the street and civil disobedience. But we've in a way, we're going to have to deal with difficulties on either side. So Labour's strategy at the minute is, let's try and bring the government down. If that's not going to work, listening to the trade unions and listening to the constituency Labour parties who, and this is all going to come up at Labour Party conference. So I suggest that you watch the conference proceedings, that you see what happens as a result of that. There's going to be a massive march in Liverpool, by the way, absolutely ginormous, and there's going to be people's vote marches at all the different political party conferences. So I want to talk a little bit about democracy now, and I'm going to tell you that I have never said I respect the result. Okay? I refuse to say it. I refuse to say it. Why? Because the campaign was the most appalling campaign you could ever imagine. Full of lies, as you've rightly said, sir, at the back. Full of lies, okay? But there was also something wrong with it, and this narrowing of the franchise, which for me is not democracy. It's really bad democracy when you say certain groups of people shall not be allowed to participate when they're going to have to pay the price and they're going to be the most affected by it. I couldn't do that. I couldn't say I respect it because it was, because of those reasons. But there was something else really worrying me about it as well. And that's all now come out in the public domain because the vote was bought. The vote was bought by DUP money. Okay, I've told you about the party who are holding the balance of power, right? They exploited a loophole in election rules and paid loads and loads of money to the Vote Leave campaign, and now they have been found it was illegal, right? It was actually illegal what they did. So we've got Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, these 2 ginormous tech companies who've, it has now been revealed that they mined people's big data, that they targeted loads of social media at people. They were profiling people, and so all this stuff is mixed up. Putin's in there as well. It was the same interference as happened in the Trump elections. It was the same interference that happened in the French presidential elections. It was the same interference that happened in the Kenyan elections. And why would I speak about that? Well, I do election observation and fragile democracies for the EU. I was in Kenya for the Kenyan elections. 1 week before the elections, the head of the Electoral Board's Digital Democracy Unit was murdered in dodgy circumstances. The truth will come out at some point in the future. And 1 week after the Kenyan elections, the Supreme Court annulled the elections because of exactly the same kind of interference that we've experienced in the UK. Now, I find it extraordinary that a democracy like Kenya, that's perceived to be not such a strong democracy as the UK, should take a brave decision to annul the result of an election which was seen to be wanting, but it did. And now we've got all kinds of challenges going on. We've had whistleblowers who worked for Vote Leave, Chris Wiley and the other guy, they worked for Vote Leave. They were Brexiteers, okay? And they blew the whistle on all the dodgy stuff that was happening behind the scenes. And they said initially they would still have voted Brexit, okay? They've changed their minds subsequently. I think it's really important that we listen to all these people when we talk about democracy. Because for me, it was really rubbish democracy. I'm not prepared to stand up for rubbish democracy, for people voting for things they had no idea, for people being manipulated by a load of lies from politicians. So I think it's really important. And now there are even legal challenges against this. So, sorry, I didn't answer all the questions, did I? But, you know, I had a young person recently saying to me, I thought Brexit was a breakfast cereal, right? This was at the Miners' Gala in Durham, which is a socialist rally that happens every year, with more people going to it than Glastonbury this year, apparently. Well, Glastonbury didn't happen, I was there. I was actually there with the Kurdish community because I support the Freedom for Öcalan campaign, which was the international campaign that they supported. And the Bollocks to Brexit campaigners were there, and they were giving out leaflets to everybody, leaflets and stickers. And that field was full of people who'd voted Brexit wearing Bollocks to Brexit stickers. And Jeremy will have seen it. He was on the platform, okay? And this is a Nissan area. It's a Brexit voting area, and they have put forward motions to conference saying they want to support the people's vote. So even in the Brexity areas, what we're getting now is this realization that what happened in the referendum was a cry. It was a cry of pain, but it's not going to be relieved by us doing Brexit. And I think it's really important that we do see a way to give to these disadvantaged communities who voted Brexit. We need to be listening, and we need to have a completely different agenda for them. And it can't, I mean, the Tories will never give it to them. In or out of the EU, they won't get it from the Tories, will they? So what we have to try and do is we have to try and get a Labour government or a coalition left government. And I believe, you know, I'm not tribal Labour, so I'm happy with coalitions. And I think that we do need to try and stay in the EU to change the EU. Now, sorry, and I know you want to stop me, but one of the worst things for me about the Brexit vote is that the people who really want Brexit, who are they? Nigel Farage, okay? A neo-Nazi as a child at school. That's what his teachers said. You can still read the notes. Okay, he wants Brexit. Donald Trump wants it like mad. He called the EU his foe. Marine Le Pen wants Brexit. Okay, Geert Wilders wants Brexit. Right, the fascist parties want Brexit. I don't want to be on the same side as those people. And even if the EU has problems, I still want to remain in the EU, because for me, fundamentally, it's a peace project and it's a union of people. And that's what we have to do. We have to reclaim those values. Now, some people might think that in the EU, politicians don't have very much power, that we can't do very much, okay? I'm proud to be the British politician #1 for report amendments. And most of my amendments pass. That is progressive policy in the EU, right? Who's telling that story back home? Who's listening to that? Today in the European Parliament, we passed a motion to censure Hungary. We did that, okay? We can do things. And I think it's really important. And I'm sorry for those of you who think that the UK will always block. It will block when the Tories are in power, in the same way that if you've got a Conservative government, anywhere else it will block. But if we're in the EU and we have a left-wing government, we can be good European partners. Leaving the EU is an abandonment of solidarity with the left across Europe.
Thank you, Julie. Bitte, Andrej.
I try to speak in English, and we have maybe more direct communication. Concerning the question of democracy, I'm as well election observer since 10 years for the Council of Europe in very different countries. That's true what you said. There were lies, there are people excluded, but this is the situation. Most of the elections, we know, even in our country, there are a lot of lies in the elections, and there are as well people excluded in most of the elections. So that's true, but I don't think this is the core argument, I would say, to tackle maybe the referendum. I just want to refer to one issue. Nobody is debating on this. There is a referendum now in Macedonia on the name change. But not only on the name change, the question is, do you want to change the name of Macedonia to Northern Macedonia to become member of EU and NATO? That's only the question. So if you say yes, you say yes to membership of NATO. And this is a fundamental, it's a questioning the Council of Europe, for example, should reject, because it's not correct. It's not, they cannot decide on the name without the different question becoming member of NATO. This is just an example that there are a lot of, how to say, manipulated referendum, but everybody is accepting this. Nobody, there's no critics on this. Is there, so if there is a dynamic in the British population, as you indicated, that they want to change the decision they did 2 years ago, I think there should be a possibility. I'm not sure, I don't know the development in the British population. But so if now, let's say from a democratic point of view, now 2/3 of the people clearly say this was a wrong decision, we want another decision, there should be a democratic way to realize it. But what is a political proposal to give room to this way? There should be a prolongation of the negotiations. Because if you don't, if now, because the door will close end of November, and if they don't prolong the negotiations, and there is a possibility to do it, then there is no room for this political process in Britain. So I think this should be a proposal we should do. Never mind if it's true or not, if the majority is now in favor or not, but I think under the current circumstances, there should be a prolongation of these negotiations. The question, I didn't say stay and change, but I said there are forces like you and others in Britain, they want to remain, and say from a left-wing point of view, they want to change the European Union, but this should be a bit more than just a phrase, because the European Union is a very hard neoliberal project at the moment in the interests of special European companies, of course with social elements, with a parliament which is not as powerful as the national parliament, and all these issues. And I think we should then, and we will reach, of course, the hand to all these projects that we really try to change European Union. One issue could be the soziale Fortschrittsklausel, we call it in German, the social progress clause, which was always a demand of the European trade union movement and never was introduced in the treaties. This is a very one very little concrete example, but then we really should work on this. The question on majority you made, and I would say if there is a process in Britain that Labour will win the elections under Jeremy Corbyn, who is, from my point of view, is a left-winger, is in the political landscape of Germany more Die Linke than the Social Democratic Party. We congratulated him to win the elections and not the Social Democrats. They didn't congratulate him because even it was their sister party. I think a strong Labour Party who win the elections with a strategy as well of changing the European Union, this would be it's really changing the balance of powers in the European Union. Now we are a minority. Those who are criticizing the way the European Union is working, who are criticizing this from the left wing, from the social wing, from a peaceful point of view. We are a minority, but I think, for example, a strong Labour Party together with a socialist party of, let's say, Portugal, or with a strong left from France and a stronger left as well from Germany as well. Of course, we can change, but it's difficult because the treaties are working not in our direction. The treaties are. We have, for example, in Germany, we have a constitution which is open in economic terms. We can have socialism in Germany with our constitution. For example, we can't have socialism with a European treaty. It's inside the European treaty. It's a very clear orientation on a so-called open market politics. So this is a big issue, but I think it's possible to change, but it's not very realistic at the moment. I'm always talking to my comrades, and so that I say we have to realize a lot of crisis coming in the Europe because of the way it's working. It's not only the lies. Of course, there were the lies and the right wingers who pushed for the Brexit referendum, but it's as well the alienation of population from European Union. Of course, there was a lot of propaganda by British yellow press. I know this, and there's very low knowledge about the working of European Union in Britain, even in the left in Britain, as far as I experienced. But it's as well the problem as well is the way European Union is working. It's not so far not a project of the peoples. Maybe we can have some European Union as a project of the peoples, and we are very much in favor of this. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Vielen Dank. Thank you very much. Do you feel that the people that spoke before, do you think, Julie's saying she didn't answer everything, so would anyone else like to say anything at this point? If not, we could hear more from Julie. She felt like she didn't. People are nodding, so yeah, okay, so here we go. Julie.
Okay, I think I covered. Sorry, you asked me about the consequences of another referendum. And I think it would depend on how big the margin was. One of the things people are worried about is whether or not people have shifted enough, one way or the other. Because if Remain won on a narrow majority, we are no further forward. We are still in this gridlock situation, I think. So it's not something to enter into lightly, which I suppose is why the party prefer to have a general election first. I think what is needed, though, is that Labour can put some clear water between the way it's operating on Brexit and the way the Tories are operating on Brexit. And unfortunately, Labour voted to trigger Article 50, and that upset a lot of people. I mean, some of my colleagues in the PL, I wouldn't have voted for it. I mean, I support Jeremy, but I wouldn't have voted to trigger Article 50. So we have looked like we have been enacting a Tory Brexit. Okay, so there are many people who look at what we're doing look at what the Parliamentary Labour Party is doing and go, well, this is just going along with the Tories. We need to put some space. Really, we really need to have some space between us and them. And I think some people have been suggesting to me that if Labour backed a people's vote as a kind of ultimate option, if everything else doesn't work, if we can't bring down the government, that puts some distance. And I seriously believe that the trade unions backing it, the majority of trade unions backing it, is what Labour needed. It needed the trade unions to come out and say that. Right, Phil, you talked about the media. Okay. Yes, we have a massive problem. Where's Phil? He was talking about the media. We have a massive problem with the right-wing media. Huge problem. And one of the reasons why Jeremy won his leadership twice is because Momentum, which is the grassroots movement that has really enabled Labour to move further to the left, had an incredible social media campaign called We Are His Media. Okay, there was a hashtag, We Are His Media. We can't rely on any of the traditional media, not even the BBC, for our message to be heard in the public domain. Okay, we know we can't. They're completely out for us at every opportunity. And it's very, very difficult. We just don't get a fair press. So I think we've accepted that that's the situation, that's where we are. It's never going to be any different until we have some proper press regulation. Okay? We don't have proper press regulation, and it won't change. And our press is in the hands of just a small minority of very right-wing press barons. And until we can change that, we are not going to see a difference. And I think we have to do what we do because it's the right thing to do, rather than worrying about the press, frankly. What we do need to do is have some media literacy. We need to really give our citizens, our young people, better tools to question the things that they're reading in the public domain and the things that they're reading on the internet. And yes, May has passed her sell-by date, but they're not going to get rid of her because nobody else wants it, because Brexit is toxic for whoever delivers it from any party. So they're just going to let Theresa May carry on, okay? And in a way, I don't want us to have it. I was quite happy with the election results in 2017 because they won, but they looked like they lost. We didn't win, but we looked like we won. And it was an amazing result for us, which, showed that people weren't happy with the Tories, put her in a difficult position. But we don't have to deal with it. And I think in a way, that's a better position to be in. And we haven't taken anything off the table, and she's boxed herself in. She's given herself no wiggle room whatsoever. So I think we're still in quite a good position, and I think our position was strengthened. I've been worried that the party hadn't stood up enough for young people. I know that young people really are very pro-European. They've been born into the EU. They don't necessarily see all its faults, I have to say, okay? They see that the EU offers them opportunities, and they feel European, and they don't distinguish between the EU and Europe, and they want to be part of Europe. And I do education and culture policy, I do youth policy, and so part of my decision about the way I speak to my members and about my position is to stand up for young people. And I'm standing up for young people by opposing Brexit. I'm also standing up for the creative communities because artists are going to be completely destroyed by a Tory Brexit. and we haven't spoken about freedom of movement very much, but I cherish freedom of movement, and I think we have to really stand up for it. Of course, one of the things that Tories don't want is freedom of movement. They're kind of willing to sacrifice everything else because they want to apparently control borders. And what's being offered at the moment, if we somehow have a weird kind of fudge that allows us to continue trading in goods, maybe in not services, that was what Chequers proposed. Somehow or other we managed to do a weird kind of fudge where trade is okay, so we're going to trade in stuff, but we're not going to allow people to move. You know what that means? That means that a tin of meat will have more rights than a human being. And I'm not prepared to live in that kind of world. I think we have to fight against that kind of Brexit, where there might be a weird kind of deal that allows us to sort of be in customs union or single market, but then we don't let people move freely. I think that will be an appalling situation for all of us. And just maybe to talk about what's happened to the Tory party, okay? The Tory party has become UKIP, frankly, okay? Many UKIP members are now joining the Tory party. They've been encouraged to do so by Aaron Banks, the millionaire who funded Brexit, who's implicated in the illegality of the campaign. These people are telling UKIP members to join the Tory party, to make sure that the Tory party respects the vote. So I have huge problems with us looking in any way whatsoever if we're going down that route. An extension of Article 50. Well, that is being talked about, okay? And it's being talked about at a number of different levels. DM are talking about it, and I met Varoufakis in Edinburgh at the book festival, and he was also talking to Jeremy, and there are conversations about trying to ask for an extension of Article 50, which probably is the best solution.
He is against, he excluded.
He has. Well,
part of the escalation strategy.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to ask for it because we're running out of road. We're really running out of road. And a cliff edge Brexit, a no-deal Brexit will be a disaster. And not just for the UK, but also, I think, for the EU, okay? And I'm clear about that. This is a two-way. We have to look at the benefits for everybody. So there is a campaign called Take a Break from Brexit, which is looking at trying to push for this somehow or other. I'm not proud, you talked about the UK blocking. I know that the UK has been a poor partner in many ways, but that's a UK run by the Tory party. That isn't a UK that would be run by a left government, that upheld all the good principles of the EU and could put forward many of its own ideas for a better Europe. And I think when Jeremy spoke recently to PES leaders in The Hague, he warned them, if you don't oppose the neoliberal austerity agenda, if you don't oppose this will keep happening across Europe. We will see more of this sense of alienation. And maybe just to talk about alienation. People are alienated from politicians in Westminster. I don't believe they're alienated from the EU, and I tell you why. Liverpool, in my constituency, was left to rot. Managed decline is what the Tories decided they would do with Liverpool. But the EU, regional development funding, the cohesion policy and the ERDF and ESF money, that money came to Liverpool in its millions to rebuild the city, to give it status as the capital of culture. And Liverpool voted Remain because job done in Liverpool. Liverpool understood about Europe, and it had a council that told the true story about Europe, defended us and gave us money and supported us when our government in Westminster abandoned us. And that's what's needed. It's needed the true story. So I don't buy that everybody feels alienated from the EU or from Brussels. They feel alienated from elite politicians, for sure, but they don't necessarily feel alienated from the organisations that have supported them. And what's now happened is that Wales has discovered that, of course, most of its money, most of its investment comes from the EU. But the Welsh Assembly and the government never bothered to tell the true story. Cornwall realised the same thing. Loads and loads of its money came from the EU. And, you know, they voted out and then they said, oh, but we'd still like the money, okay? So I don't think that alienation is as true as you would say, okay? I'm going to stop there, I think, yeah?
I'll let you speak in a moment, Andrej. I just want to quickly ask Julie one more question, which I think people put, which was connected to this stay and change question in terms of the EU. I think someone asked, have you seen any examples of where that takes place, where people are trying to do that? I mean, I know Varoufakis, but anything else?
Well, I can only talk from my perspective, I suppose, of being in the European Parliament. We have a left anti-austerity caucus in the Parliament, which comprises of people from the S&D group, from the far left, from the Greens, and we work together to try and do things within that left anti-austerity caucus. And we work both within the European Parliament, but also we had a left forum in Marseille last year. We are having another one in Bilbao coming up. We've written a different scenario, you know, so that was in response to Juncker's scenarios when he did his State of the Union speech a year ago. So we have a group of committed Europeans on the left who are trying to come up with alternative plans, strategies, solutions. What I think is that the Labour Party in the UK is not engaging enough with that group of people. It's pretty much me, I would say. Okay. When I was in Marseille last year, there were some people from the Labour Party there, and they were from Jeremy's constituency. So I hope they went back and told him. But you have to understand that the Labour Party back home is everybody's consumed back home by Brexit. That doesn't leave a lot of space for other things. It's like sucking the oxygen out of everything. You know, there's no other legislation going through, or the Tories are shoving things under the radar because we're all just watching Brexit. And actually what I didn't tell you, perhaps, and it's important now, about where the Tories are taking us with Brexit, which is really terrifying. If people really wanted more democracy and they really wanted more control, okay, the Tories have written into their Brexit withdrawal bill a process by which they will be able to pass more, so post-Brexit, they would be able to enact what's called Henry VIII powers, which means less parliamentary scrutiny. They can just do these things because they won't have to go to the Parliament in order. So now they're saying, oh, everything's going to be the same. We're going to align with the EU. We're going to keep all the regulations. We're going to have all the human rights, all the employment rights, all the social rights. We're not going to do anything about that. But they have written into the bills that are passing through, and they're passing because we haven't managed to stop them, okay? They have got written into all this stuff that's going forward. Did you know this? They've got these awful powers which give them more power and less power to Parliament and less power to the people. So another reason to stop it is to stop that. In fact, it's a power grab. It's not democracy at all. It's not giving back control. So we need to keep alerting people to what they're trying to do.
Thank you.
Julie, you're speaking here in the Karl Liebknecht Haus. Karl Liebknecht has a famous sentence, quite often quoted in German, the main enemy is at home. And I think you're a good example that you explained to us our main enemy is the Tories and is Westminster, and it's not the EU and it's not Brussels. You are in a bit different role than we are. And we are here faced as well with the European Union, which is very much a German architecture in the interests of the German export industry. And of course, it's my role to point to this and to point to the to the task we are facing if we try to change this. One point to the young people. It seems to me as well that the young people in Britain are now very much facing to staying in the European Union. My impression as well is it's the majority of the young people in Southern Europe is the opposite, because they are faced with austerity in Greece, in Spain, in Portugal, becoming more and more critical on the European Union. So we have different processes here. I can understand all the point of views they are thinking. I think we have to take this into account for a common European left strategy. Just maybe a last word. You mentioned the cohesion funds for Liverpool, which was a good issue, and we are always defending the cohesion funds. This was part of a strategy started in 86 to have some in the gemeinsame europäische Akte, it was called, common European frame. I don't know. The idea was to have more social equality in the different regions of the European Union. Now we are, since austerity, it's a financial crisis in the last 10 years, we are, if you look to the figures, we have more regions becoming poorer and other regions becoming richer, so we have a trend to more inequality in the European Union. And now the proposal of the European Commission for the 7-year Finanzrahmen, der MFR, der mittelfristige Finanzrahmen von 21 to 27, it's inside now 10% cut of cohesion funds on the one side. On the other side, it's much more money now for military issues. So this is the alarming trend. So maybe we can stop this and together fight for a better Europe. Thank you very much.
Also, thank you both, and thanks very much everyone else for coming. It's been a very interesting evening. Obviously, there's a lot of confusion still over what will happen, and the landscape is changing daily. Certainly in terms of what's going to happen with the Conservative Party. I'm sure everyone here would agree. So nochmals vielen Dank an unsere Referenten und vielen Dank an alle, die gekommen sind. Wir haben ein paar Ankündigungen. Eine bevorstehende Tagung über die Reproduktionsrechte in Lateinamerika. Das findet statt am 24. Montag, 24. September, 19 Uhr here, and all the details are in this leaflet. If anyone wants to come along to the next Berlin Labour meeting, that's happening next week, Tuesday, at Roots Café in Lebauerstraße 10, I think, oder 11 vielleicht. And alle sind willkommen. Everyone is welcome. So So thank you very much. If you want to continue this discussion, I think there is a plan to go to somewhere on Torstrasse. Can you?
The price, if you just wait at the end, they'll all go together to the bar around the corner.
Yeah. So thanks again once more. Thank you, everyone. Oh, and thank you to the translators. Ja, die Übersetzerinnen. Dankeschön. Danke.